resolutions right now. But what if I told you that getting 1% better every day for a year would make you 37 times better by December, while getting 1% worse would leave you with nearly nothing? Today we're diving deep into James Clear's Atomic Habits, specifically how tiny changes compound into life transformation, why your current approach to habits is probably backwards, and the 4 laws that can rewire your behavior. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how to build systems that make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible.
So let's start with something that might surprise people. This isn't just another self-help book, right?
Not at all. Atomic Habits has become this massive cultural phenomenon, over 25 million copies sold, translated into 60-plus languages. But what makes it different is that Clear approaches habit formation like a systems engineer. He's not talking about willpower or motivation. He's talking about designing your environment and identity to make change inevitable.
Systems engineer, that's interesting. So what exactly does he mean by atomic habits?
Clear uses atomic to mean both small and fundamental, like atoms that make up larger molecules. These are tiny changes that seem insignificant at first. Reading 1 page daily, doing 1 push-up, writing 1 sentence. But here's the key insight from the page content. They're the smallest unit of positive change that compounds over time.
And that math you mentioned at the beginning, 1% better daily equals 37 times better annually, that's not just motivational speak?
No, it's actual compound mathematics. According to the Habit Insight summary, if you get 1% better every day for a year, you end up 37 times better. But if you get 1% worse each day, you basically decline to almost nothing. It's like compound interest for self-improvement.
That's wild. So how does this actually work in practice? What's the framework?
Clear breaks it down into what he calls the 4 laws of behavior change. And according to the International Journal of Social Impact Review, these laws have their roots in behavioral and cognitive psychology, social learning, reinforcement theory, operant conditioning.
Okay, walk me through these 4 laws.
First law, make it obvious. This is about cues. Design your environment to make good habit cues visible and bad habit cues invisible. The page content gives practical examples. Want to read more? Put a book on your pillow. Want to eat healthier? Put fruits at eye level in your fridge.
So it's about environmental design, not willpower.
Exactly. Second law, make it attractive. This involves temptation bundling, pairing what you need to do with what you want to do, like only listening to your favorite podcast while exercising, or joining a culture where the behavior is normal.
That's clever. What about the third law?
Make it easy. This is where the 2-minute rule comes in. According to the page content, you downscale habits until they can be done in 2 minutes or less. Instead of, I'm going to work out for an hour, you start with, I'm going to put on my gym clothes.
Wait, just putting on gym clothes counts as the habit?
Yes. And here's why it works. Once you're in gym clothes, you're way more likely to actually go to the gym. But even if you don't, you still completed the habit. It removes the overwhelming feeling that kills most attempts at change.
That's actually brilliant. And the fourth law?
Make it satisfying. Use immediate rewards, track your habits visibly, and never miss twice in a row. The page content mentions habit trackers and the don't break the chain method. It's about creating that immediate positive feedback loop.
So these 4 laws create this cycle that reinforces itself?
Exactly. Clear explains that atomic habits work through 4 simple steps: cue, craving, response, reward. This cycle repeats automatically once established, and the habit becomes effortless through repetition.
Now, there's something else in the page content that caught my attention, this idea of identity-based habits. What's that about?
This might be the most powerful concept in the book. Clear argues that lasting change comes from identity-based habits, where you first decide the type of person you want to be, then prove it to yourself with small wins. As he puts it, every action is a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
So instead of saying, I want to lose weight, you'd say what?
You'd say, I am a healthy person, and then ask, what would a healthy person do? According to the Frat blog analysis, this identity framing guides daily behavior more reliably than willpower. Instead of, I want to write more, the internal script becomes, I am a writer.
That's a complete mindset shift. And there's actually a story in the page content about this, right?
Yes. Clear tells this story about his wife in high school. On the first day of class, the teacher asked if anyone could remember everyone's name. She raised her hand and accurately named all 30 or so people. The guy next to her said, I couldn't even remember your name.
And that moment shaped her identity?
Exactly. She felt like, I'm the type of person who is good at remembering people's names. And even today, she's great at remembering names. Clear's insight is that in order to believe in a new identity, we have to prove it to ourselves through small actions.
So it's not just about changing behavior, it's about changing who you think you are.
Right. Your current behaviors are simply a reflection of your current identity. What you do now is a mirror image of the type of person you believe you are, either consciously or subconsciously.
Now let's talk about some of the practical strategies. I saw something called habit stacking in the page content.
Habit stacking is brilliant. It's the formula, after current habit, I will new habit. You're leveraging existing neural pathways. Like, after I pour my morning coffee, I'll write down 3 things I'm grateful for. One reviewer mentioned they tried this with reading. After brushing teeth at night, read for 10 minutes.
And that actually worked for them?
According to the book suggestion review, it's been 4 months and they've read more books this year than in the last 3 years combined. The key is attaching the new habit to something you already do automatically.
What about breaking bad habits? Does the framework work in reverse?
Absolutely. For breaking habits, you invert the laws. Make it invisible, reduce exposure to cues. Make it unattractive, reframe your mindset about the habit. Make it difficult, add steps between you and bad habits. Make it unsatisfying, consider accountability partners.
The page content mentions some specific examples of this.
Yes. Want to check your phone less? Leave it in another room. Want to avoid junk food? Hide it and put healthy options at eye level. One person moved their phone charger to the kitchen so their phone stays there overnight instead of next to their bed. They called it a game changer for sleep.
Now, I have to ask, this all sounds great in theory, but what do the critics say? Is there any pushback on this approach?
Good question. The International Journal of Social Impact Review notes that while the book makes complicated ideas understandable to a broader audience, it has shortcomings in addressing more complex structural or cultural influences on behavior.
What does that mean exactly?
It means Clear's approach works well for individual behavior change, but it doesn't fully account for systemic issues. If you're struggling financially or dealing with discrimination, just changing your environment might not be enough. The solutions can be overly individualistic.
That's a fair critique. What about the writing style? I noticed some mixed reviews on that.
The Taste of Calm review mentions that the writing style is simple, direct, and almost like a blog post. Some found it repetitive. But as that reviewer noted, that's not why I read it. I read it because I wanted to quit some bad habits and finally introduce better ones.
So it's more about the practical application than literary merit.
Exactly. That same reviewer said they recommend the book, but only if you treat it like a workbook. It's not something to read once and forget. You have to start implementing as you go.
And did it work for them?
They said for the first time in their 40s, they managed to build a consistent exercise habit. Once they understood how habits are formed and maintained, they could apply the same approach to other areas: breakfast, skincare routine, screen habits.
That's pretty compelling. What about the psychological backing? Is this just pop psychology or is there real science behind it?
According to the academic review, Clear draws on behavioral and cognitive psychology concepts including social learning, reinforcement theory, implementation intention, and operant conditioning. He's bringing together theories from numerous scientific and behavioral fields.
So there's legitimate psychological research supporting these methods.
Yes, but Clear's genius is in making these complex psychological concepts accessible. As Mark Manson said in his endorsement, Clear distills the most fundamental information about habit formation so you can accomplish more by focusing on less.
Let's talk about implementation. If someone wanted to start applying these principles today, where should they begin?
The page content suggests starting with a habit audit. Track all your activities for 2 days to identify patterns. Then pick one tiny habit and apply the 4 laws. Make it obvious by designing your environment. Make it attractive through temptation bundling. Make it easy with the 2-minute rule. And make it satisfying with immediate rewards.
And the identity piece, how do you work on that?
Start by asking, who do I want to become? Instead of, what do I want to achieve? Then ask, what would that type of person do? Every time you face a choice, each small action becomes evidence of your new identity.
There's something really powerful about that reframe. Instead of fighting against who you are, you're becoming who you want to be.
Exactly. And Clear emphasizes that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. It's not about setting bigger goals, it's about designing better systems.
That quote keeps coming up in the page content. What does it mean in practical terms?
It means if your system is to go to the gym when you feel motivated, you'll fail when motivation disappears. But if your system is to put on gym clothes every morning after coffee, you'll succeed regardless of how you feel. The system is more reliable than the goal.
So, when you step back from all this, What's the real takeaway? What makes Atomic Habits different from every other habit book out there?
I think it's the combination of psychological rigor and practical simplicity. Clear treats failure as data, not drama. He understands that motivation arrives after action, not before. And he gives you a clear framework that respects how human psychology actually works.
And the numbers speak for themselves. 25 million copies sold, translated into 60+ languages. That's not just hype.
Right. But what's interesting is that despite its massive popularity, the academic review notes it still oversimplifies some complex behavioral factors. It's not a perfect solution, but it's an incredibly practical starting point for most people.
So here's what this really comes down to. If you've been struggling with habits, the problem probably isn't your willpower or motivation. The problem is your system. Atomic Habits gives you a framework to design better systems based on how your brain actually works.
And the beauty is in the simplicity. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. You just need to get 1% better each day and let compound growth do the rest. Small changes, remarkable results.
Want to take action? Start with the 2-minute rule. Pick one habit you want to build and scale it down until it takes 2 minutes or less. Put on gym clothes, read 1 page, write 1 sentence, then stack it onto something you already do automatically. Remember that story about Claire's wife remembering 30 classmates' names? That moment didn't just show off her memory, it created her identity as someone good with names. Your tiny actions today are votes for who you're becoming tomorrow. Thanks for joining us on Copilot Podcasts.